You're listening to the Confidence Within podcast. If you are a successful professional entrepreneur who is nonetheless struggling with the fear of public speaking, then you are in the right place. This podcast is all about igniting your inner confidence, learning to show up with genuine authority and brilliance, and becoming the best version of yourself. I'm your host, Victoria Lyazniansky, and welcome to my show. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Confidence Within podcast. Today's topic was inspired by the movie I've seen recently called Air. And by the way, if you haven't seen it, it's a really great film about Nike forming a partnership with young Michael Jordan and launching Air Jordans, which became the most successful shoe line in history. In one of the scenes, Sonny Vaccaro, who was a Nike executive at the time, he was played by Matt Damon, he chats with George Raveling, who at the time was assistant coach of the US men's basketball team. And by the way, 10 years after their conversation happened, he became Nike's basketball marketing director. So Mr. Raveling tells the story of how 20 years earlier, in 1963, he was attending the March on Washington. A friend of his father's saw him there and asked him and his buddy to help with security. And that's how he ended up pretty much behind the podium and backstage, listening to all the speakers. So as he was standing backstage, the last speaker finished and walked past him, and George just couldn't help himself. He stopped the speaker and he said, "This was the best speech I've ever heard." The speaker smiled at him, said, "Thank you, young man," folded the paper with his speech written on it, and put it in George's pocket. Later that day, George looked through the speech, searching for his favorite line, and it wasn't there. And as he read the speech, he noticed that the whole second half of the speech was completely different from what he heard backstage. At this point, Sonny asks him, "What was your favorite line?" And Mr. Raveling replies, "I have a dream." True story. In fact, George Raveling held on to that speech. He had offers in millions to sell the speech, and he refused every time and kept it. And I think right now he gave it on a long-term loan to a university. But my point is, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did not intend to say, "I have a dream," in his speech. In fact, the whole second half of the speech was meant to be completely different. And what happened as he was speaking, he was looking at the crowd in front of him. And halfway through the speech, he realized that people were not with him, that he was not connecting the way that he was hoping he would connect. And so what he did, he pushed the paper aside and spoke from the heart. He completely changed the whole second half of his pre-written speech and improvised. And the rest is history. And by the way, he did not come up with "I have a dream" right then and there. It wasn't something that he truly improvised in his speech. He actually used those same words, "I have a dream," in a different speech a few months earlier. But the point is, he was not going to continue with his pre-planned speech when he noticed that he was not connecting. And here is a lesson for all of us. The goal of any presentation is to connect with your audience, right? And it doesn't matter what kind of presentation you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're speaking on stage in front of thousands of people. It doesn't matter if you are giving an update in a meeting in front of 10 people. It doesn't matter if you're giving a TV interview or if you're speaking on radio. The goal is still the same, to connect to your audience. So please do yourself a favor and don't follow ridiculous advice of some people who say, "Oh, if you want to not feel anxious during your presentation, just look above the audience." Or, "If you want to feel confident, don't make eye contact," which makes absolutely no sense. You need to see your audience. You need to make meaningful eye contact in order for you to truly connect with them and to watch for their connection and for their reaction in return. So next time you're giving a presentation, no matter which format it is in, be prepared. Have your notes ready. But look at your audience for signs. Are they listening to you? Are they maintaining eye contact with you? Are they giving you nonverbal feedback? Do they look bored? And by the way, you can't determine it from just one person. There is always someone who looks bored, you know that. You can't let that influence you. You have to look at many people in order for you to gather that feedback that you're looking for. And if you do realize that your presentation is not landing, that you are not connecting, that people are listening to you, but they are not really hearing you, then discard your notes and speak from the heart. Improvise. Change the rest of your presentation. Make changes based on the connection. Let me tell you a story. When I worked at my last corporate job, which was a large educational organization, and I was managing all of the software development on all of the application projects within that organization. We rolled out a big new application, and I was put in charge of training the entire organization on this. And it wasn't simply training on how to do things. The reason they wanted me to train was because they wanted to win people over and make the transition to this new application a lot easier, because there was some reluctance in some of the divisions to accept this new application. And so I created the presentation, created this training, and I had to repeat the same presentation in front of each division of the company. But think about it. Every division is different. First of all, they all have completely different responsibilities, completely different goals, completely different level of technical expertise, and completely different expectations. And so I didn't know in advance what to expect from each division. I had an idea, but I was ready to pivot. And so as I was doing the training, I was reading their nonverbal feedback. Nobody would raise their hand, obviously, and tell me, oh, no, we don't want this system, right? But you can read it in the audience. And so I had to shift my presentation. I had to change my presentation as I went to include more examples, to include more stories that would persuade them that this application was something that was going to make their lives a lot easier. I had to adjust my presentation as I went in terms of technical expertise and not go that deep into the technical aspects, because I could see that people were not quite understanding the technical details. And so I made sure that I explained those technical details in complete layman terms for those divisions that were not quite as technical as others. And I did everything that I could to truly connect to my audience, to make this training entertaining, to make this training exciting. Not just go out there and throw some information at them. That never works, right? And when you truly connect to your audience, you feel their connection in return. And by the way, connect is one of the 4 foundational parts of my anxiety to authority framework. And if you want to learn more about my framework, then check out my Brilliant Speakers Academy coaching program, which you can find at www.brilliantspeakersacademy.com. And you can learn more about my program, and you can learn more about how I help my clients conquer their fear of public speaking for good and show up with genuine confidence, authority, and brilliance. Thank you so much for listening. I cannot wait to see you next Wednesday, and have a fantastic week. Bye for now.